or more.
Yeah, that's right. They live right on that property where that house is right there, I think.
They've made some right pretty little houses. I just hope they'll keep them neat and clean.
Look how it's grown up behind that.
Oh, that's a jungle. Baxter killed, one year he killed 28 squirrels out of his pecan trees up here, trying to save his pecans. And look at the size of some of those white oaks up in there that have grown up.
Well, now that's in the market property. They've never cut. But now this hill you're going up around here, Ben Market sent a mule down here one time, an old mule just to put him out to pasture there, John, then plowed up the garden with him. Around Market, Russell Helms and I were riding that mule and wrapped it home to his mane, and you know how short they cut a mule's mane.
Yeah.
This thing was a little steeper than a little more up right here. We got right along up about here, Ralph's handhold slipped, and we went over that mule's back just like we was breathing.
Yeah, Ralph got out of medical school. Well, he worked in the shop a while, didn't he? To save up money, and then he went to school.
He did work there some years.
And then he settled at Brookhaven, and he stayed there. He had a good reputation down there, from what I've heard.
I'm gonna say that MD looked a whole lot better than that little runny fella did.
Yeah, he looked nice looking for
Looked more like his mother, Meredith Ladd.
Was that who his mother was?
Yeah.
Meredith
Kind of
Ladd.
heavy girl, not fat, but heavy.
Was she from here?
No, she was Brookhaven. Now then, right there's where that path, see, they graded that land, filled in this stuff. This was a sag, went up to the ridge. Right along about there, where they turned across to go across that. No, that didn't. That lot right there was Mr. Roy's corn patch. Just the other edge of that, they turned to go across it. Now that was a vacant lot. He used to work that.
Well, they used to have a garden in there, you know.
Yeah, this is the Baptist parsonage.
And people like Mr. Walker lived here?
No, not here. He lived down at the other place. The last man that lived here.
Derek, maybe?
No, he never lived here. The man that married my father and mother. I can't call his name. He's not thin, man. I don't know. I've never seen a fellow like him. But after, I would say, now wait a minute, they had a brother, they had a man that was just revered. What the hell did he make? Stayed here a pretty good while.
Stone?
No, not that song.
I just heard of that name.
You didn't hear much, you heard of him. So I cannot think of that man's name. Everybody loved him. Everybody loved him. I just can't call his name right now.
This is before Walker, of course.
Yeah, and I believe he lived here. Glenn was the man that, and he was after the man I'm trying to tell you about. That man was here in the later part of the other century.
Late 90s, huh?
Yeah, Mr. Tees one time said when he came to town, he wore a stovepipe hat. But Mr. Glenn was the man who married my parents, and he lived here. And after Mr. Glenn, I believe you would find that Mr. Derrick came, and he lived there, bought the place where the DeMarcus lived then. And he lived there, and the Stone lived there, and the Walkers lived there. Mr. Hewlett lived there.
Well, when did they get the property that Howard lived in?
Oh, they bought that from James McGowan. And that was the old cock home.
The old
Charlie Cock's home.
Charlie Cox. He was once law or something, wasn't he?
Sheriff, yeah.
Sheriff. Now the Birdsong house, you say Birdsong tore down a pretty good house and built that.
He tore down the Stallings house.
Yeah. Okay.
And built that house there. And this house sits just maybe a tiny bit forward to what the front porch of the old house is about where the wall of this house is.
You know, any kind of little piece of flat ground in Water Valley is going to have a house on it, wouldn't it? Especially in the teens and 20s when...
You're talking about this boy, Ralph, Jr. We was talking about Ms. Market one time. She came in to who else was it? He didn't know about her sister, older sister, Miss Alice. She's kind of crazy, too. He said, it just makes me scared to get old when I know of this. heredity in the family.
Well, he mentioned that his grandmother went crazy.
She did, but that woman had one hell of a life.
I told him, I said, friend, just think of what all she had to go through with the trial in 1909 about the Hill boy. And then they said, is there anything else? I said, yeah. There was an incident up at Taylor, Mississippi when he took a young woman to Jackson, Tennessee on his engine and like he got fired.
And set up housekeeping up there.
Yeah. And I said, now that all came out in the trial, and Miss Market had to sit there and listen to it, but said she already knew about it.
She went up there and brought that woman back.
That's what I told him. And of course, it was hard for me to tell them all this stuff, but they were very nice about it, very nice.
That boy is a much more polished person than that little rap. He looks so much like a little rap. He just kind of got some ways.
Yeah, he's kind of abrupt. And then they said, and their father was a tyrant reform. I said, that's right. I've heard that he used to whip his hand. And they said he carried a whip with him on the place, didn't he? I said, that's right. That's what I've heard.
Old man John Market?
Yeah.
I never heard too much about him.
Well, who was Ben Market?
Ben Market is John Market's brother.
Well, that's the one that was so mean.
Yeah, Ben was always mean.
And then there was a Boast Market.
This was Boast Market. No, Bow Market. And John was called Bow.
Yeah, but there was...
Boast was the one that was the flagman on the train that stomped the fingers of the nigger.
Yeah, and the nigger shot him.
Right,
They lynched him at Winona.
Nigger, huh?
They lynched that nigger at Winona.
And the nigger shot him and killed him.
That's right.
Now, he had a brother who was a grown young man, 27, 8 years old, and I think he worked for the railroad. But he died of a violent case of typhoid fever.
Good.
It's been a family of tragedy.
That's what I told him. I said, just think what that woman had to live through.
Now, she wanted...
And one drowned out in Texas, they told me.
Two of them drowned. Roy drowned. He drowned after Joe. Joe drowned first. Joe drowned on the 4th of July, 1919. I believe, was it Detroit, was it?
No, it was further over on Lake Erie. Anyway, he was photographing the...
He and another man were in the basket of a balloon.
Yeah.
And the balloon broke loose from its moor.
Toledo, Ohio.
And floated out over the lake. And the other man couldn't swim. And when he got down so far, Joe jumped out and drowned. But I believe if Joe had stayed with that thing till just about ready to hit the water and jumped out and just got a little buoyancy holding on to that thing, they got the other man. I think they got him too. But now Roy and another man drowned on a fishing trip in a lake out in Texas.
I didn't know about that, but these fellas told me that.
20, I don't know why that was cut. I know Charlie Lowe called me and told me, and I knew darn well they wouldn't tell Sally. Her folks, I called Sally and I said, Sally, Charlie Lowe just called me and told me Roy Market drowned in Texas. I said, well, I'm sorry. I said, I always liked Roy.
Well, now they asked me this. They said, you know, we've got cousins and we never speak. We don't even know each other. He said, was there any relationship between, any cordiality between these over here? I had already told him, I said, now, your grandfather had a brother lived over yonder on Wood Street that had $3. He was C.G. Market. They never heard of it.
His name was Charles Galloway, named for old Bishop Galloway, the Methodist bishop.
Oh, yeah, so many people were named for Galloway.
I think he was an elephant orator.
Yeah. Well,
but he was known as Tug Market.
That's what I told him. I said, now, he was called Tug on the air. Oh, we've heard of Tug Market. And he says, now, what was the problem between the two Market families? I said, I don't know. I tried to talk to those ladies twice about their daddy, and they didn't want to talk about him. They were kind of rude to me up there one night.
Oh, no, they don't want to talk about him. Well, now, you know what the trouble was.
No.
Well, it's just hearsay, but many more alluded to it. Miss Market ran a dining room up there, and she kept two boarders. Had one room with a private bed. She kept two young men up there. And Howard Crawford was Silas Bowe.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
And Minnie more went up there one day, and they down and met Howard Crawford. And whether she made a play for him or what, I don't know, but she got him and she married him. And that day forward, Sally never spoke to him.
Well, I knew there was something wrong. I didn't know what it was. But They didn't want to talk about. They said, as far as we're concerned, Grandfather Robertson was our father. Says our father laid up there in that front room and died after a lingering illness. I think this is.
He did.
And says we never knew him. And that's all they wanted to say. I had this train sheet with him on it. They didn't even offer to look at it.
Well, now, when I was, this took place after they were good grown. When I was a child, we'd be playing at a neighborhood here. And it's fixed for years. We all played together and played out on that corner light of him called an arc light at night. But in the last time in the afternoon, Miss Market and all, and
Sally?
No, the girl older than Sally.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she married and lived in Louisiana.
Four of them.
I'll tell you who she was in a little bit. But and Miss Market was walking in, and they'd walk over here and come out to the market. He'd be playing in the market yard, tumbling and piano.
They'd walk over here and visit these people?
Visit for an hour or two in the late afternoon.
There was a relation between them.
And it all stopped when Minmo got high.
Mm-hmm. Now there were three handsome
Brother
girls.
Weston was that man I was trying to tell you about.
Brother Weston, yeah, I've seen him in the paper. He's in our history, yeah.
But he was the one peculiarity he had. He would not let them hold Thanksgiving services in that church. And what he said was that he thought an annual Thanksgiving was like stenching the nostrils of Jehovah.
Oh, no.
And he wouldn't let them have one either.
Wouldn't let them have a Thanksgiving service.
You're supposed to be thankful every day for what you got.
Now, God tell you, guy read you up because Thanksgiving was one of his favorite services. That would tear him up. Well,
now down next to us, that house was built to face the east. And that big house wasn't there. I remember that house wasn't there. There was a a tennis court on that lot. And this old house is where Miss Duke lived. And that had a big old kitchen that stuck out nearly to the alley, right? Made the back part of our place shaded.
Yeah.
Big old gabled room.
Yeah. Well, you say the Dukes live there?
Miss Duke lived there, so I was about a teenage.
What Duke was that?
Well, it was Gerald Harris's grandmother.
Oh, well, that was...
Miss Betty Duke.
Yeah, the mother of his mother, yeah.
Yeah, see,
she was Ella Duke.
You see about how much space a 20-foot square room would take going back there.
Good gracious.
And this was the side porch, and Margaret's room around here was enclosed front porch. They faced this way.
And there was a tennis court here?
On this lot.
Yeah. Who built that house?
Miss Duke built that house. The fellows that run the boarding house there, and she ran for some years.
Uh-huh.
Now the Stallings, another of the Stallings sons, built this house.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you what his name was.
But later on, Mr. Leland Trusty lived
Mr. Leland Trusty bought, and they lived there as far back as I remember.
Yeah. Was he Mr. Thad's brother?
He was, yeah. Wife was Minnie McKee.
I've got a picture of him. And right yonder,
he was a very neat little fellow.
Had a little mustache.
Yeah, a little British mustache, right?
Yeah.
Red, British brown.
Yeah.
I went to school through here.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't wear an overcoat much. He cold didn't bother me much. If I went through there with an overcoat on, Miss Trusty put every rag clothes over you had on. Oh, I don't need all them. Yes, you do. Fred Kendrick went by here with an overcoat on. Now, the next two places was two places. That was the Will King place.
W.J. King.
Yeah. And house in a long, two-story, rectangular house on this east side here.
Yeah.
Now, this was I don't know anything about this place further back. Lord Howard built that house. His house burned when the Bill King house and the rental house burned.
Yeah.
But this was where the Ball Show home was.
Ball Show. I never heard of that one.
Mr. Ball Show was a baker. And ran a bakery, and Mr. Ike Kennedy worked for him as a boy. And he didn't come to work one morning. They sent Mr. Ike up here to find out what was the matter. And he peeked in the window, and Mr. Ball Show was laying there with his head off the window. And he had cut his throat. Blood all over the floor. Nobody at home with him.
Right.
And that blood stayed on that floor. I mean, after Kennedy's bought that place and dressed it up, they had a rug, of course. They pulled that rug back into place there, that big around, that blood stain on the floor. He never did leave.
The Kennedys bought the place, huh?
At Kennedy's. And they tore that house down and built a square two-story house there, a very nice house. And it got a fire one morning. Ike was shaving, and you heard some pop and said, "Come here, Ida." I said, "What? You said, you hear a noise?" I said, "Ike, this house is on fire." And it was. It burned slap down. But not slap down. It burned down the top off and into the other because Lloyd Howard bought it in that condition and overhauled it and lived in it till it burned when the King house burned. And then he built this house. Now that house was where it was one of the McFarland homes there. It was a house style somewhat like the Simmons house down there. It had a balcony, long columns.
Oh, really?
And
it's a big house then, huh?
It was big on the front, two-story on the front. It wasn't two-story all the way back. Papa and my mama went together several years, and they were coming home to Bay one night. Papa looked upstairs in that house and had electric lights. I mean, didn't have electric lights, had lamps on. But this woman was naked, putting a gown on over her head. And I was saying, "They tell me that house is haunted." Papa said, "Well, I'm running up down right now." So she would speak to him for the long. Mr. Nolan bought that house and tore it down and built this one out of it.
Mr. W.A. Nolan.
About 1911, I remember Papa working on that house. It must have been in the fall of 1911 because they had a strike in September.
During the strike, yeah, while they were all...
It could have been 12, when 1912 they built that house. But you see, they graded the yard down, you would always see that rise around that tree, and they graded all the rest of it, but didn't take that tree down. Now that house down where Henry lived, that was the barnyard to the Cock place, Judge McGowan's place. And I remember there was a barn on it. And that lot doesn't go all the way back as the length of that church.
No, it didn't.
It's just so many 100 feet out, maybe 200 feet, and comes in behind it. They used to plenty of pasture room and stuff.
Yeah.
Back in there.
And
Captain Herring built that house.
That's a nice house too, and it's sold cheap.
They used to have they changed the style of those steps. It had come out there, Captain Herring used to sit out there, sit on that thing with steps. He was a very nice looking, average sized man.
Captain Herring.
R.S. Herring.
R.S. Herring, yeah. Bob Herring.
Well, they sure did take that down. They put in a new. You reckon they graded? They must have been fixing that up.
That tree was 105 years old. I counted the rings.
See, he used to come out down those steps and had those wings. He'd sit out there on those wings.
Yeah. That's where my boy lives now up there.
Do they own that?
Yeah, they bought it.
What are they going to do with all that space? They're going to have to get them a cow, a goat or two or something.
Oh, that boy's got gardens all back there.
Now this, old Mr. Chapman built that as a rental house and sold it to the Baptist.
That was Mr. Chapman's father, Mr.
John L. Chapman, right here, and he built this one too. That was his home.
Yeah. In jail. That was Mr. John Chapman I knew at Paducah.
I don't know about this. So many people live in this little house. I don't know who.
I remember when Frank Storms lived there one time.
Oh, yeah. I bet there's 25 families of people live there. But the Greers built that house.
Miss Hattie said that he built that and they married and moved into it.
Well, I didn't know. I remember when they were boys going to school, and I was a little boy, and they were up in the upper grades. They were 8 or 10 years older. Every time the funeral home asked me one time, Mrs. T.B. Greer was brought in. I wanted to know who was Miss T.B. Greer. And I racked my brain. I said, I don't know. And Kate Wood says, Miss Tom Bell. Yeah, Greer. Says, Miss Tom Bell Greer. I said, oh my gosh, if you'd asked me, if it was Miss Tom Bell, I'd known who you're talking about. Now, the Episcopal Church, First Episcopal Church is on that Dunn lot. Oh, and it burned one night. They thought some tramps must have been sleeping in there.
Now,
Lee Flake lived there when I saw back down there.
Oh, I've heard of Lee Flake.
He was an engineer on the railroad and kind of nutty.
Did he run a laundry?
Yeah, he made it put in the laundry. And one time he was spuddling somewhere around there with some dynamite and stuff. See, it wasn't in automobiles then, but he got scared of it and ran and threw it out in the street. and it exploded, and it shook the coffee out of the cups up on the hill.
Well, now, before I forget, now I got to...
They built the next Christmas tree built on this lot. It was as high as that eaves.
Okay. Well, we're going to come back and pick up here one day. But before I forget it, somewhere back in my memory, Mr. Bob Ward told me about, did Skinny Hartwell shoot a little girl one time accidentally?
By accident. That's got to be on Wagner Street in that house where Lee Herring later lived. I don't know who lives there now.
Well, what happened?
I don't know that anything happened. I think he must not have been over 12, 10 or 12 years old when it happened. I never heard of anything happening. You know, his father was called Professor Hartwell.
Yeah.
Taught music.
Yeah.
But that Hartwell house over there, now Skinny lived down there on the corner of Calhoun and Simmons until after his mother died. But they got that house from Ms. Hartwell's sister and her husband, who had no children. Now then, you tell me who the old conductor was. He was from Duck Hill.
I know who he was. He was,
and he had a brother that lived to be old in Memphis, and he was a motion picture censor up there.
I think that was in a minute. It wasn't Ford.
No.
He'd go through the train. I am Captain so-and-so. Ben Benford. Captain
Benford, that's the man.
Said, I'm Captain Will or Jim or whatever his name, Benford. I assure you a safe trip. And about that time, Dad Norton turned over Trigg Avenue.
I remember when I was a child, Ms. Hartwell and Ms. Benford's old mother, Ms. Wiggins, died over at that house.
I knew there was some connection with the Benfords.
He was a Methodist preacher.
Well, now tell me again, how did the Hartwells get it from the Benfords?
They got it from Ms. Hartwell, Ms. Benford's sister.
Oh, Ms. Benford's sister.
Ms. Benford and...
Then she was the wife of Professor Hartwell.
Yes.
Who died in 1913.
She was a very active person. She taught Sunday school in the Methodist Church for over 50 years. I remember when they had a party for her. But after she died, that's when Walter got the place. And I guess he had some other, 2 or 3 others too.
Yeah, he was known mostly as Walter. I called him Skinny on the railroad.
Skinny Hartwell, yes.
Yeah.
His name was Walter. They called him Skinny.
But
he was a trombone playing dude.
Yeah, I've got a picture of him with a band. But you say he did shoot a little girl?
Uh-huh. Sure
was it Lee Flake's daughter?
No. I don't know her being Flake, but I can't tell you who it was.
What, you can show me what?
Yeah, I can show you the house where they lived.
Well, Bob Ward told me about it.
Wagner Street.
And I couldn't figure a young boy like that. I guess he's just pranking with a gun.
He was pranking with a gun. It was,
a terrible thing to happen.
Done about it, they just took to be a happening, and I don't remember the name of the child. My aunt really used to know. It was Wagner.
Well, now, who was the fellow that got his throat cut up there by Miss Madge Shaw's mother's home one time way back in the 90s?
Well, his name was Phipps.
Harris was involved in it.
P-H-I-P.
Phipps?
Yeah, Phipps.
Okay.
But he was...
The fellow Harris killed him, didn't he?
I didn't know that. Now, you know, Madge's mother, when she became a widow, had to have a boyfriend.
That might have been when she picked up Mr. Will Thorne, huh?
Well, this is before Will Thorne. But right, all that country between that house and Big Yank, there's a wide expanse of territory in there. I mean, 300 feet wide, just when its railroad property went back there. So there's a big oak tree down there. Maybe as big as that one. And I understood it back in the sense of that oak tree where this fellow's throat was cut, and what the old timers thought was that it was Jim Shaw's brother. He knew what he'd gotten. He kind of got on to what was up, and he just waited. He knew he went there that night. He just waited for him down there.
Oh, is that right? Of course, Miss Madge wouldn't have known about that.
She told that one time and said that Mama went out about 11:30 to get some coal. And
That's right. That's what she told me.
Mr. Everett came and wanted to get a sheet to cover this man up in. He'd been killed up the street there in front of his master mechanic's home. And the way I heard it in the old time, it took place down there back of that place.
Yeah, well. And it was her brother-in-law that might have done it, huh?
Yeah. Now, later, she married Will Thoman. Old Pat, Tom Scanlon told a funny thing about Will Thoman. The Thorners lived out on Horsepins Creek. They had good land out there, too. He was Oscar Davis's mother's brother.
Yeah, that's right.
But
Uncle Jim Davis's wife.
Yeah. Tom Scanlon said one night that the policeman all across town raided all the girls in the red light district and took them down and put them in calaboose.
Mm-hmm.
And the boys were all around the saloon. They got to drinking. What they were going to do, they were going down there and get them out. And they got about drunk time they got down there, and Will Thorne was drunk and the rest of them. And they broke in the calaboose and got the girls out, and Will Thorne fell down on the floor, passed out. And when the jailer came the next morning, he was lying there on the floor sleeping off a drunk.
Well, what were those, some sisters over there? That Terry, was that their name?
Ran a house?
Yeah, ran a house. It was,
I cannot name anybody who ran those houses over there. Somebody was an old Mrs. Heath over there. I've heard there's old Manny Heath.
There was two sisters. Mr. Ward told me who they were.
Now, they were up there about where Bob Ward lived later. There was no lady lived up there named Miss Free. There are two stories there. Old Pat Quinn was a little stubby Irishman, had orange-colored stubble all over his face, native Irishman. Pat got drunk one Saturday night and hollered all night. And old Miss Free went down Monday morning and made out a bill against him, had him put under a peace bond. Some weeks or 2 months or so later, George Ainge came to town, a noted Methodist evangelist. And down there, you know where Jim Adlin lived?
Yeah.
Jim Adlin said that was a park when he built that house there. George Ainge came, and boy, what a valley got happened from one end to the other. And Ms. Free was going to the meeting every night. One night she contained herself till she got home, and she shouted all night.
Mm.
And the next day, old Pat went down to a master and threw out a bill against her and had her put under a peace bond. That ain't an Irishman for you.
I mean that.
But the funny thing later, she had 2 or 3 girls. And they were, I don't know if they were bad characters, but they were kind of gay blades. And they were going to have a pound supper up in this freeze, and all the boys were going to bring the food and a dance, too. And Prentice Carr came in, he was going, and he took his suit to the shop with him and had it in his cupboard. And he didn't have time between the time he got in here to go home and rather get to the store and get anything. So he got dressed and went out to the clinker pit with a sack and scooped up some dry clinker to fill that sack with, and went up there and passed it in and sat on the table. Well, they were up in the front of the house dancing, and after maybe 30 minutes or 40 minutes, said old Miss Free appeared at the door and said, "Well, supper's ready. And all y'all can come in now." Said everybody except that son of a bitch what brought them charcoals. And he can leave.
Brought the charcoal. Oh, Anna Kate would appreciate that, wouldn't she?
I told Dixie Hendricks that she got a big laugh out of it. I wouldn't tell Miss Anna Kate unless she asked me to.
Oh, that's something. Well, Fred, I was up the other night looking through the 1880, or, I guess it was the 1880, maybe 1900 censuses, and I come across a house back over here on the back of the shop, and there's a mother and there's some daughters in the house, and a couple of those people are listed by the census taker as dissipators.
Well, maybe they were made it.
I just wondered what to say. I believe it was dissipators. I guess that's the way you'd classify a prostitute.
Well, the Askews lived here, and Rob Ward told me this. Rob Two Askews, two Dr. Askews. And this was the one who was Jerome Askew's father. Jerome Askew's sister, I think her name was Maureen Askew. She'd been screwing around, and she finally just took up residence in one of these hooker houses over there. That's when they just disgraced the Askews to such an extent that they got it moved to Leadville, Colorado.
Oh, my goodness. I've seen that name somewhere, Maureen Askew.
Now, up there by Kate Harley's, and then next house where somebody lived, they cut the top story off, there was two stories on the front. Another Dr. J.J. Askew lived there.
Yeah.
And his wife, Miss Annie.
J.J. Askew.
They lived there, but he was a brother to the father of this girl. But that Dr. J.J. Askew was the father of Miss Nellie, who spent 55 years in the asylum. And she had a brother that lived over at his name was J.J. too. He worked for the post office.
55 years.
Miss Nellie, she was an accomplished painter. And she and Miss Nellie Baker, who became Gore, were going to put in a studio together. And Miss Nellie Gore went up there to spend the night. And I don't know what came up, but had occasion to raise Miss Nellie Askew's pillow, and she had a butcher knife under it. She was figuring on taking Nellie Gore away from me off that night. But it wasn't many days till they had to take it this summer.
Man,
I heard that they had to keep on a padded cell, and she pulled every hair on her head out. She just flickered the button.
Well, now, before Fred Walden lived here, did Mr. Bosma live there? No, not Bosma.
No, old man Olson.
Pete Olson.
Pete Olson. As far as I know, Pete Olson built it.
Fred Walden told me a story one time about digging up a leg of somebody out here. Who was it got his leg cut off on the railroad or injured and they had to cut it off or something?
You're going to turn here, I'll go up a little further through that house.
Up here? Oh, yeah. Well, I'm just going to turn here. Harry Williams had one leg, didn't
he? Yeah, but I don't know where that
he didn't ever live
done.
there.
I think that was done.
Maybe in Holly Springs.
Something like that.
He was frying for Charlie Hammond on number 3, and they ran off north of Holly Springs.
Mr. Harry Williams he was what you call one of these erratic religious people.
Oh, was it?
Oh, and he and Miss Ruby would have a racket over at home. That's called Stephen Church. He'd come over at a prayer meeting service, and he'd get talk. Brother Walker, I just want to talk. I just want to talk a little while. And he'd tell every darn thing about it.
He let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah. Now, he had a brother, old Jim Williams, elected a deacon up there. They did the wrong thing when they did that. So the Bible says a deacon should be a man of one wife.
Yeah.
But he hadn't had any wife then.
Yeah, that's right. We had it, and can't be divorced either. We wanted to elect Herman Brown one time, and he wouldn't take it.
And they raided Stella Williams' place. They'd been having a big poker game and dinner up there, and arrested old Jim Williams, deacon in the church, at that poker game.
Stella Williams was probably higher class than he was.
She was. Stella was. She's a screwing thing for those days, but Stella was a genteel person. Now, this house is right back past that. I don't believe the roof's falling in.
Miss Betty Heron used to live up here.
That's the house.
Is that the house?
Yeah.
Or in the pit. Well, she's kin to Lorraine, isn't she?
Yes, she's Lorraine's aunt.
Something has fallen in.
That's where the Hartwells lived.
Oh, really? Let's see, now she was a Bennett, wasn't she? Miss Hartwell was a Bennett? Jimmy Bennett's sister?
Well, that was Miss Skinny Hartwell.
Yeah.
She was a
but
buyer.
this is where Professor Hartwell is.
She was a buyer.
A buyer. But how did I get Bennett in there?
Well, her sister was Jim Bennett's wife, and she was Byers too.
Yeah,
Russell Byers' sister.
Yeah. And there was an Ed Byers, wasn't there?
You know, that thing looked like it fell of its own volition, didn't it?
I think it did. It didn't burn. Looked to me like somebody had been stealing the timbers out of it.
Yeah, Ed Byers was another brother. He had a little short, fat fellow, and his nickname was Keg.
Keg.
Ron Market, he's about Ron Market, so he used to call me Keg Buyers.
On one of these pictures, I believe you put your names on it probably for not Myra, but Cecil down there. And you got Toe Jam Carpenter. Did that fella have a name?
He did, but that's all I ever heard him
Toe
called.
Jam.
I know in school the teacher called him something else, but we never called him anything but Toe Jam. He was always dirty.
Oh, you should look at here.
He lived right about where the jail is.
Whose little house is that now?
That belongs to the Bakers, 311 Wagner.
Yeah, who used to live in it? It's funny how you forget about the little houses.
What that old fellow machine shop had one glass eye, big eye. He and his wife lived there. No man, Billy Baker lived here.
Yeah. Is there still a baker in there?
No, what's her name? Died.
Miss Minnie?
No, Miss Minnie Minnie Baker died years back, but this was.
Oh, I know. She married Shady Hale.
Yeah. She just died about 3 or 4 months ago.
And somebody came from California and buried her and didn't even go to the cemetery. Is that the story?
I didn't know about that.
Norris Harding told me about it. Oh, he was so mad.
Niece came from
California.
Where they lived. She
made the arrangements for the funeral and got some people to act as pallbearers and didn't even go up there. Oh, Norris was mad.
I didn't hear that. I didn't know that at all. Alberta was her name.
Alberta. Now, what kin were they to Miss Gore?
Right here's an old establishment. This house is a remodeled version of the Spooner house that you knew it as.
This one right here.
Right here.
Mm-hmm.
But Miss Spooner was a Brooks, and her daddy was the drummer boy for the company that went from here to the Civil War. And they lived in that thing there for, I bet you, 100 years about.
You know, I called her up the other day, and I asked her, wasn't her mother named Bessie Brooks? Yeah. I said, well, I've got her on a picture with Miss Caulfield and Miss Clyde Adams and Miss Fanny Tarver and Miss Cody Addington. I said, but I don't have a lot of the names. Do you maybe have that picture? I don't have any picture. And she just wasn't in it at all.
They had Miss Spooner had an old maid aunt, Miss Jimmy Brooks. She was a little short, plumpish woman. Miss Fulmer, who lived next door, told us that when she was born, they put her in a quart cup and put the lid on it. She was so little. But she lived, the old man Crosby lived up down on the hill where Blue McCullough used to live, but his wife was a big fat woman, and she hardly ever left the place. But old man Crosby was a loyal Baptist. And then it didn't have lights on the street. Papa said he carried a brass lantern to church and went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night too. But Madge Kennedy Cahill said that he and somebody else and Miss Jimmy Brooks would come with them, 3 or 4 of them going to the Baptist church. They'd come by their house there 30 minutes ahead of time, sit there and talk a little bit before they went on to church. But Papa said old man Crosby would he sat on the end of one of these straight pews in that church, that wooden church, but he'd sit that brass lantern out in the aisle, right, brother? But when he got out the door, coming out, he'd light up a match, light up that lantern so he could stay out the holes.
Yeah, keep him out of the holes, huh? And this is where that family lived all those years.
Yeah, now this other house was Robert Smith, the old man Timber Smith, they called him. He was a Yankee. He bought Heading, what they called Heading.
Yeah.
And he was a man that rushed to town to tell Captain Price that Ed Gammons was killing that girl out there at that place. He was past there when it was going on.
Oh, I heard about that fella. He tried to stop it when just about got killed, huh?
I didn't hear that part, but he sure left in a hurry.
Hey,
Jane. Brought the news to town of what was taking place out there, and Captain Price went, but he didn't catch Gammons.
No, he didn't.
And that second day after that, I think Captain Gammons sent him word to come down to Miss Sussman, who was his aunt down below Fort Well,
yeah,
and be able to protect him, bring him in. But I knew Robert Smith. He was a little older than I was. The old man Timber Smith and his wife.
Timber Smith.
I remember when Dr. Armstrong kind of built that house on that lot, but tell me, it used to be a blacksmith shop on that lot, but I don't remember. I remember when all this back on McClarty's, that funeral home and everything was a wagon yard. They had a 2-room camp house on it where the folks came from Calhoun could spend
Well, there
the
was
night.
another camp house up here back of Wagner, wasn't there?
Well,
Who it
that
belonged
they
to.
tell me originally was a hotel.
Oh.
It was a brick building, and it had an upstairs gallery on the south side that had no support under it,
Hmm.
and it had an arched-in place on the north side of that wall. But I was told that the way back in the very early days that was a hotel, but I tried to find out from Ed badly about it, and he couldn't remember a thing. Ed didn't remember much of anything.
No.
Yes,
Well, Mr. Eddie would have known, though, wouldn't he?
he should have known what his forebears told him, but I didn't happen to talk with him. But I asked Ed, I knew that look how that pole is bent and the way that.
Yeah. See, that tree's pushing that thing down. That's one of those old sour trees, not any good anyway. That would push that thing.
They were the Fly and Dalton debate took place up there in that grove where old man Bob T's house is. It lasted for 3 days.
Oh, that's right. I've heard about that. Fly and Dalton, two
I said,
preachers.
Mr. Ed, do you remember? Yes, I went every day. I said, well, where did it take place? He said, I think it's out here west of town. And I don't know what to argue, but
Was that old Judge Fly?
Judge Fly, and I think that's Miss A.E. Cleveland's father was the daughter. He was a hard-shell preacher.
What, Mr. E.A. Cleveland?
Yeah.
Worked at the depot.
It was a hard-shell preacher, and Judge Fly was a Methodist preacher.
Well, I'm at Coffee the other day talking to Leora Simpson, and she tells me about a Methodist church that her mother belonged to that was called some other kind of Methodist church. And there's one at Jumpers Chapel, and there's one, and they go back all the way to Georgia. It was organized in Georgia. I said, that sounds like the church Mr. Fly at Water Valley belonged to. She said, no, so he wasn't in on this one.
Well, they call this, I think it was called the Free Methodist Church.
Yeah.
But the people who belonged to it, now that one down there at that graveyard where Pearl Bear and all those bears are buried up there was see, the Flies lived just north of that. Was one of that kind of thing. The neighborhood called it the Fly Church. Fly Free Church.
Free Church.
I heard old Miss Pearl Bear's aunt, Miss Nola, lived up there across the street, must say. I was a Methodist. I belonged to the Fly Methodist Church.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's not the one Leora's talking about, I don't guess.
I don't know what that is. Went now over in Calhoun. I can't call those names now. There's some still live over there who's.
Oh, wait a minute. She's talking about Union Hill, and it was one of those churches. And her mother, she remembers going there as a little girl and playing in the gutters while her mother went to the services at Union Hill.
Where was Union Hill?
It's out there in the edge of Calhoun, past Pilgrim Rest. Mr. Evans has taken me there.
Pilgrim's Rest.
Across Turkey Creek over yonder. And it was one of those Methodist churches.
Yeah, now that was...
McKibben was the preacher.
Ah, you know, and that was a little graveyard at that church. I've been by.
Oh, yeah, some of Mr. Evans' folks buried there.
It was still, the building was still up there 30, 40 years ago.
It still is now.
I'd
like to go out there.
Does anybody make any effort to keep that building up?
I think so. Look, yeah, Leora says we go out there on the such and such a day of each July, August, and clean up around there.
Mr. Trusty told this story out there at Pine Valley. Old man Latimer Johnson, and I always liked old man Johnson. I always respected him for his holding to his opinions, but he had some peculiar ways. But he preached for him at Turkey Creek Church one Sunday a month. And one time he'd stay with Mr. John Trusty, Mr. Trusty there, and next time he'd stay with old man Newman. And Mr. Trusty said that Mr. McKibben was just as good a man as Mr. Johnson was, but he was a Methodist. Must have been one of the Fly Methodists.
Mm-hmm.
And this old man Johnson went there. This time he stayed with Henry Newman to preach next Sunday. He said, well, Henry, what's going on out here since I was out here last month? Told him 2 or 3 things. He said, well, so-and-so died. Said, where did they hold his funeral? Said, they held it up at Lake Creek Church. Said, who held his funeral? Said, Brother McKibben. He was highly thought of there. Said, old man Johnson says, Henry, in the morning you get a tub of water and go up there and scour that pulpit out before I preach that tomorrow.
That sounds like a Jew.
I wish I didn't know that on old man Johnson.
It might have been a tale.
That thing I was present at to confirm my opinion of him. I sat up with him and 2 or 3 others, and he died down here near Boydston, where Ms. Hyde lives.
Mm-hmm.
Dora West and I went out in the country there to get his son, Noah Johnson.
Noah?
Yeah. And sat up there, and about Lillian Wilkes was nursing him. Around 2 or 2:30, every once in a while she'd take a wet cloth and go around his mouth and just
Good morning, big brother. On my window now, shut. Yeah. Got out to 27 this morning. Yeah. What? That's not exactly springtime weather.
no, this is a late cold spell, but you know, in late cold spell, it seems to be cold and rainy in the winter.
Yeah. I got by pretty well in that cold tonight. Oh, I forget it. I'm looking at the George Wagner house up there. Was John Wagner a brother or a cousin of George?
He was a brother.
He was a brother. He must have been the oldest.
Mr. Dan Wagner lived over around here. You might say he built that house. He bought the place and the house out. I think he overhauled it and changed it.
Yeah.
This is where his father-in-law lived, where Dr. Young lived. But there were 3 Wagner daughters and 2 Wagner sons. John and George and Eugene. And then there was Miss Jeffrey, Mr. Wren, and Mr. Lister.
Mr. Wren, Mr. Lister, that fellow who people know him, Spanish who Hood. Dr. Hood. I think he was a philosophy teacher. I heard his teacher. I thought I heard him somewhere. Mr. State. Yeah, because he would be lecturing, and he used to lost and what he's talking about, he would slip out of class, you never know you're there. We don't ever had the one child, that's Lester. He's about 15 years old now. Well, on one of these pictures that I had Jack do for me the other day, I got it from Gladys. And Gladys Walker, and it's the 2nd grade class of 1910. I think that's the one I did. Yeah, that's the 1-year-old. And seems like there's a William Wagner on that one. Well, that's Mr. Will Wagner. I live over down there. That's where he and a friend lives. Yeah. Well, I wasn't, he was about your age then. I say about my age was about right. He's 5 days older now. Well, I remember his birthday just died about a year ago. His birthday was the anniversary of the Battle of New Orleans. Well, that was, help people remember by doing the old fiddling tune the 8th of January. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that one. Well, I think they're talking about Mr. Will Wagner. You know that group picture when they organized the Rotary Club and had the picture down at the powerhouse. Is that why they were taking that picture? I thought so. Well, yeah, obviously it's the Rotary Club, all right. I want to identify Mr. Will Wagner and get that and make a picture of it. Then it's going to want to put these bank presidents up on the wall in the director's room. Oh, and that's the only picture I know of you can get of him. When he died, they said they couldn't find him. And he was president of the bank one time. He was. He wasn't a forceful president, so he was just a wagon.
Back when he died, he was 60.
Well, let's just stop right here for a minute before we start up there, because we can look up here. Now, I knew
one side then the other.
Yeah, we'll go up the right side. Now, I knew this is the Kennedy house, Mr. Ed Kennedy, and that's was probably
There was a family, a man and his wife lived there, and when I was a little boy named Smith, and I don't know who they were.
Smith.
But Mr. Rabin asked Miss Madge, "Why don't you buy that house, Madge?" "Well, I haven't got the money, Mr. Rabin." Said, "I put up the money to get Ed to buy it." See, they made up a deal, and they used to have Ed out there helping around in the backyard, and one man Raven was going to come down the hill in his buggy.
Yeah.
I stopped over and talked to him. Mr. Ed agreed that if he loaned money, he'd buy the house.
Well, how we done?
And that's where they bought it.
Were they already married then?
Oh, yes. Now, I don't remember anybody that had a Smith that had a rounded porch on it, and the Kennedys overhauled that house into what it is now and put that square porch on there.
Now, this right over here where Eddie Myers just moved out of.
That's where Mr. Mills lived.
Mr. Arthur Mills
Arthur
lived
Mills
there.
lived there.
Well, on one of these pictures, there's a Mills boy on there.
Well, he had a son named Arthur and a hunchback named Sam. Samuel. And Kenneth was in my grave.
Kenneth, he's on that picture. Kenneth Mills.
He's the youngest one.
So Miss Mills didn't, well, he hadn't even been killed when that picture was made. He gets killed Christmas Eve, 1910.
Well,
and that's the 1910 picture.
Well, the 1910, that picture had been made before he was killed. Christmas Eve, 1910. That's my near the end of 1910.
That's when he got killed. The picture's made before he was killed, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Miss Hattie Benson was our teacher. She's on that picture.
Yeah, she's a nice-looking lady. So did the Mills stay here and raise did she stay here and raise those children?
She stayed here some years after he died, and she finally moved to Memphis. Now, all these concrete block enclosures of the ground you see around town in the cemetery.
Yeah.
Mr. Mills made them in that backyard.
Here's his house?
At that house, he had the sheds and the farms back then. He'd make up that mixture. And I don't know how many he'd make at a time, but I remember when I was a boy, he had a big stack of them stacked up there in the backyard.
Well, they're all over town. I've seen them in different places,
Her name was Freshwater.
Yuba
Freshwater.
Yuba Freshwater.
Her brother, Ben Freshwater, was in that crap game out where Ed Holloway's business is now. In the night that Bertie Wick stabbed Jim Thomas walking through the hall.
That's right. And your uncle was there?
Yeah, and they said Ben Freshwater left through the woods. He never did come back.
Oh, no. He left the country, huh?
He sure did. They were, Ms. Bob Cheese was her aunt.
Miss Freshwater, yeah.
Mrs. Freshwater was Miss Cheese's sister. And
was she already married when Mills married her? Was she a widow or was she a maiden lady?
She's just a maiden lady,
yeah.
A grown young woman. Okay. I don't know whatever relatives she had. Never heard anything about the Freshwaters except those two. But her old mother, her grandmother lived here. Lived up there with Miss Tease. Her name was Long.
And you can look from there where they're torn down all those houses, and you couldn't see how you could squeeze 4 houses in there. But they just torn down 3 of them, and there was a vacant lot there next to that corner house. Was that the Hirsch house? Or?
You mean down about where that auditorium is?
Yeah.
No, that corner house, as far back as I knew, it was the old engineer Trusty, W.T. Trusty.
W.T. Trusty. I heard it.
And then this side of that was the old Dave Hirsch home. And he had a garden lot of grapevines on the north side of it. And then south of it, there was a good wide space that Gregory took Miss Reese's house and over here.
Oh, is that why that
and
came?
Moved out over there.
There was just 3 houses in
Yeah,
there.
that house and the Hirsch house and the Trusty house. That's right. Just see that.
This first one, the one who built that big 2-story house that was torn down.
Oh, I can tell you the story of that. up the street there. They torn the house down now, and the next one down too. You know where Miss Morris Kelly lives there?
Yeah.
Well, you see the backs of those places are fairly close together.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there with my mother one afternoon about 2 o'clock or 2:30. And that house got a fire, not that one, the one ahead. Dr. Fox lived there.
Mm-hmm.
And a horse had run away with him in a buggy and thrown out and mangled his leg and had to amputate his leg. And the men had to go in there and put him on a cart and bring him across the street to his house on the back of the church is now. Their house is back there.
And his house was burning down on
The house
it.
was burning down. I mean, it burned down too, and I like to get my seat spanked because I was scared that fire. See, they're right close together on the back there. And Mama and Miss Kelly on the start and watch the fire now raise such a racket. I like to get a first class spanking.
And then they rebuilt it then. I mean, after, did it burn completely down?
Yes. He rebuilt that house.
He was a dentist doctor, wasn't
No, he was an MD. He delivered me. And I remember him coming to our house on crutches. I thought, horse was banging his leg too. And when he lived to be 90-something years old and died at Canton, where his daughter lived down there.
You don't reckon he was a part of the Cole Brothers and Fox wholesale house down there, do you?
I don't think so. He came from over at Slate Spring, Mississippi. There's quite a Fox clan over in
Mm-hmm.
there.
Then he lived in it, and then who was next? Butler Vandenberg.
No, that was later on down. When I was a small boy, that rebuilt house, I think Dr. Fox rebuilt it. If he didn't, Dr. Sisler built it. But he built it back as you saw it and knew it.
Nice home.
And he lived there. He was a widower. He lived there with his mother-in-law and his sister-in-law and his 3 children. And Miss Jessup was the youngest of Miss Horton's children, and she's Sunday school. She's our Sunday school teacher. And from Dr. Sisler, Harry Williams had bought the old Dr. Simmons' house down yonder. And he sold that, I was thinking, to Mr. Boydston. And he came up here and bought this Dr. Sisler, his house where Dr. Sisler lived. And the Harry Williams lived there for a long period of years. And after the Harry Williams, I really don't know. Charlie Lowe's mother and family lived there for 30 years.
The Courtney?
Miss Courtney?
Nope. Yeah.
Miss Lowe was
Miss Lowe.
Their mother. They lived there for some period of years. Well, I tell you, before Miss Lowe lived there, an old fellow knew there was a migration from Tennessee down in here after the First World War. And an old gentleman lived there that owned land around here. I could have might have told you his name. He only had one child, a daughter, and she was grown. I cannot call his name right now.
Came down from Tennessee.
Yeah, and they lived there, and I think they sold it and moved back to Tennessee or moved somewhere else. They left here. Well, I see that old man. They had a nice horse and buggy.
All right. Traffic out of the way. We'll head up here now. Behind the Ed Kennedy house is the Norman Milford house, as I knew it.
Yeah, well, that was the Frank Newell house. It was built
Oh, that's the Frank Newell house.
Frank Newell and Edward Cox's sister. He married Edward Cox's sister.
Yeah. Sadie?
Yeah.
Sadie Cox.
They had a daughter named Sadie. Now, here's where Miss Kelly lived.
Yeah.
And old Mr. Chapman, her daddy, built that house. Well, let me tell you a funny story.
I'm going to pull out the way of this car. Now, was Miss Kelly kin to Mr. John Chapman?
John Chapman's sister.
Yeah.
But you see how close it is down there to the colored house.
Yeah, man.
Well, Kellys were burning wood. And the wood went away mighty fast. So Morris Kelly took an auger, and I don't know how he bound the stick down, but he ground out a way down there a stick of wood and filled it with gunpowder, and then drove a dry stick in there and sawed it all smooth and threw it out on the wood pile. So he could identify it. I don't know whether it took place that night or a few nights after that, but they were sitting there by around 9:30, and so like a bomb went off down behind them there. Those niggas had stolen that wood. They just about blew the house down. But I remember, I seemed like I didn't spend the night there. I lay down there because they put a tunnel bed out from under the big bed. And the next house, different people in the Holloways lived there all my life. But before that, Grandma Royal said one time she lived there. And she came out here to a wagon to buy a turkey. And one of the turkeys got away out of the wagon and flew off and lit on the cross on top of the Catholic church.
Way up there.
Yeah. This house that was torn down was, we always called it the Spencer house. That's what my folks called it.
The Spencer house.
Louis Spencer's daddy's home. He was a druggist. And it had a brick basement of 2 big rooms. It had a first floor and then had a see the back of it was 3 stories high.
Yeah.
And it finally got to where some folks lived there. Well, it's I don't know if Spencer's had tuberculosis or not. But it got to where it was supposed to have been infected with tuberculosis.
TB house.
Huh?
TB house.
Yeah. That's when Miss Howard Kelly, they lived in Mr. C.T. Williamsburg, and she thought she had TB and she went west and stayed a year better.
And it scared folks to death, and it?
Yeah, and one day Ross Ford and I were on a dray going to deliver some groceries to Charlie Whitehead's house right there. And there was somebody sitting by a bed with an old lady with her head to the foot of the bed by the window, sitting there fanning her. We delivered those groceries and turned, it wasn't a matter of taking 2 turns, but we turned the dray around and started back, and they pulled the sheet up over her. She died while we were taking those groceries. No, I don't know who those people were. See, numerous people lived in there.
And you know, folks didn't go to the hospital to die then, did they?
No, didn't have the hospital.
No.
Didn't have the hospital alive in high school. We had one record of an argument in the literature class one day, and had 2 sides, and we were arguing for the hospital and against it.
Oh, man.
And I remember Marjorie Jackson, the doctors opposed. Yeah.
Oh, did they?
Break in on their practice. And Marjorie Jackson argued that the problem for the hospital caused more folks to be sick. Now, that's the craziest thing I ever heard.
Marjorie Jackson.
Yeah. Well, Harry Mama, and then third year.
It was Harry Mama, and what was
The
it?
oldest girl named was Miriam. She was just as fine as her son. Then Harry Mama, and then Marjorie, and then Dixie.
Yeah.
Marjorie was somewhat of a writer, not a famous writer, but she wrote quite a bit of stuff. She did wrote. Burned herself.
She was the 3rd child.
Yeah. She was erratic. She was smart. They all thought she was the smartest one out. Marjorie was a little thin girl, and she just, I don't know what caused her death. I think I do. I think she had cancer.
Is Dixie still living?
Yeah, she's in Oxford with her mom, but they have separate apartments, but they live in a joint, I think in a joint apartment.
Oh, well, I thought that, well, the oldest girl in where?
Miriam just died this past year in California. Been out there all of her married days. She married a boy from at the university. He became a doctor. His name is Leighton Ray. And she was in Columbia School, and they married, went to California, and stayed out there. Well, she must have married him about 1920 along in there. And last year, 81, that's 61 years it was out there. She was a genteel person.
Well, you know, now I talked to a fellow yesterday over the phone from Chattanooga, Knoxville, and Joe Sidney Whitehead.
Oh, yeah.
Well, is that his home?
No.
He was up yonder by the high school.
Yeah, live right south of this little area. Come on down to that, what's that east and west street there?
Lafayette Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where his Kinky Whitehead lived down there, and that's his brother.
Yeah, that was old man Joe Whitehead's family. And this was Charlie, and Joe was Charlie's uncle.
I see. That's Charlie Whitehead right there.
Yeah, but when I was a little boy, Mr. R.C. Leland lived there. Dad's great uncle.
Yeah.
And did you see that magnolia tree up there in that next yard?
Yeah.
My daddy was a little boy, about 4 years old, lived up on the site where Miss Trusty's house was. And he said that tree was as big when these little boys was, and he was an old man. And all that time. So Grandma liked flowers. She always had potted flowers. And she and Miss Leland had swapped plants. And things. One day, she was going down and called on Miss Leland, and that Captain Allen place was fenced, and Miss Allen was out in the yard. And she came came down to the fence and talked about grandma. She went back to that low limb on the magnolia and broke off a magnolia and gave it to grandma. Grandma's hand for palsy. We buy milk butter from his Pullman next door, and it just passed over the fence, and it's down there and talking. And they keep turning that thing one side and one side, and they're supposed to say, Miss Kate, you're still that butter. She said, no, I'm not. She straightened up and go right back, start shaking that. But the same time she gave her that magnolia blossom, the time we got to Miss Leland's house, she'd shaken that blossom apart. Now, the blossom was ready, I think, to come apart, but just that movement of the hand.
Shattered, huh?
Yeah.
Well, this is the Charlie Whitehead house.
Yeah.
But before that, it was the Leland house.
Bob Leland.
Bob Leland, yeah. Is he the one that was the postmaster here one time? Or was that Tom Leland?
Tom Leland. That's Miss. What's that lady? Miss Alice.
Now, right next door.
Well, this is Captain Jim Allen home. That's the house. Now, he had a house ahead of that, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
But they said that he had a parrot hanging somewhere around there on the porch of the parrot. Just like that, hop. I'm hot! 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 And they found it. They killed the fire. But that house, it was always finished by, and had a fill-in gable between that two gables there. Mm-hmm. And it looks better now than it was looking all my life.
Well, I'm done. It's a nice looking house.
See, Miss Moore was Miss Allen's niece. She had been advancing money on Captain Allen was older. She got the house and came back here from New Orleans after she was with her and lived there. But that's where, Captain Allen was Miss Pete Gardner's uncle.
Yeah, yeah. You say Miss Moore was Captain Allen's niece.
Miss Allen.
Miss Allen.
That name is Watson. And Miss Allen's name was Flora. His family is there.
Flora Watson.
Yeah, but how it came to be that the nieces and nephews all called her pretty. And she wasn't pretty at all. She was a little bitty old, up woman. And she liked it with everybody. I've heard one time I saw John A. Whitson, that's Miss Moore's brother, riding the horse into a history buggy. That man with his buggy head over there. Johnny, little bitty one with big boy. Johnny, you get off of that horse. You can hear all over this neighborhood.
Well, this is beginning to make a little sense now. Dr. Whitson was Miss Allen's
brother-in-law. Miss Whitson was Miss Allen's sister. Now, Miss Whitson was the prettiest old lady, but Miss Allen just wasn't pretty. But, they never had it. Captain Allen never had children. And she was, we always thought she pestered him so much. They rented out the west side of the house, just living in these two rooms on this side. And one day she went back to the house to get him a drink of water, and she didn't come back. And he went in there and found her sprawled on the kitchen floor. She just dropped dead right there. Well, the thought was, Captain Allen get a little relief now. He's out and gone. He grieved that old woman as long as he lived.
Oh, man, don't tell me. Was he a little fella?
He was a very average-sized man. I say when he was, I didn't know him. He looked like a old man. He might have weighed 175, 80 pounds.
Yeah, he's a good fellow, man. Well, now, where did the Whitson live? This back over yonder.
Yeah, over where the Pink Palace is.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Miss Allen belonged to an organization they used to call the King's Dogs. And I told you this place had a fence around it. And they used to have parties in here, charge admission. And they'd string Japanese lanterns all around.
I read about one of those things in the paper, about the Japanese lantern.
They got a camera in them.
Yeah.
Now, that place up down on the hill, it goes back to part of it. You can see where that projecting room, that you can tell that was built on.
Yeah, you can tell that was.
Now, the other part of it, the other storeroom, maybe the different on this side, was the main body of the house. And it went back to the early days. I don't know who. Old Miss Powell lived there. He later lived up on the west side of the park. Old man Lee Clark was her brother. Probably should have lived out here in the Springdale country. Old man Lee Clark came to town with an ox team, and I think a bale or 2 bales of cotton on the wagon to his daddy for sale. Sold the cotton and drove out from up here and put him in the '60s. Docked yard and took off to Texas. Carried the cotton money with him. But now, Mr. McCorkle bought that property and it was vacant on West of John the Clock property. And I'm sure he possibly put that room on the front. He lived there a long time, and I don't remember when they lived there.
And then later John Tarver got it.
Mr. Leland Trusted bought it just as an investment. And I guess he did. He bought it from Mr. McCorkle. Charlie Hammond lived in that house one time. And when Mr. Trusted bought it and sold it to John Tarver.
And he was living there when he died in 1920, I guess.
Yeah, he went. I seen him over there. He was a thin man in there, and he fell there. Hard to climb the hill. Under 30 years old when he died.
Oh, real young guy.
But that place, you see, people blocked off this cotton house. That man and named everything back to Cotton Hall. And west in behind Mr. Drug land, put over to the Clark property, which is across the street from where we live.
Yeah, big lot.
And this man stood out there in all day, defending her boundaries. She's got about a half acre, good field back behind it, and then they had a servant's house there in the backyard. We lived on the east side of that house, and there, me and Magna Thompson, his wife Annie, lived in that back house.
So y'all were living there then when you put that tumble on that.
That's where I came out buying those stuff out in the street. See, that's a true alley. Men used to walk through it. Go all the time working over here. Go through that alley.
That alley right there.
Yeah, get out and cross that mountain. That's how we cross that mountain woods like. And one day, some big boy goes in and the alley. Say, boy, said what? Well, you're a cat? What kind of cat? He said, oh, it's just an old Model T cat. He's talking about a Model T cat.
Model T cat.
But see, Miss Herring lives right over where Henry Bradley used to live.
Yeah.
That's where I started. I would make a 2 eggnog here, and that's what you take a tall tea glass and make it plumb full. I guess that's my old lady could take it for today, but she lived on that eggnog.
Yeah, well, it had a lot of good vitamins in it, calories too.
But you can see there where I came out, and I was under the brow of the hill. And I got my senses. I thought, gee, you better get up and get stuff somewhere right here. I don't know if you. I just counted the steps.
Yeah,
there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then about 7, 8. My 13 steps.
I'm going to pull off down here somewhere.
Yeah, wait just a
car right behind me. I got it.
Mr. McCorkle built these 2 houses for rental place.
Oh, the Warren Ray house there? And
The old Tatum house. That Tatum house.
oh, is that Frank Tatum house right there where
Yeah.
Harris used to live there?
Now, the most unusual thing right here, Papa said, this thing seems natural now. You see what a hollow this is?
Yeah.
That went up through there. That, he said, used to be a plank walk over there, with our house, and up here in this deep dip, and the old man, Whitney, lived over there on State Street, and they went into the back way, and they went under with a buggy, under that sidewalk, and up that
Was that much of a hollow?
and they stopped filming, and he filled that yard just by catching it. You know,
Washed off.
yeah, what's washed off was land boat. Now that, Bruce, you know where Church Street is?
Yeah.
Well, there wasn't any Herring Street. See, that's direct north and south. That thing wound up the hill, and wound north just about Charlie Murray's garden lot, and turned to the left and went in between James Thompson and Happy Thompson's old house, between Miss Wagner and Miss Rogers, and came on through here and went down and went out by Tom Hendricks. And his former told me the Yankee soldiers marched that route going through here.
Well, then that's the old Prophet Bridge Road then.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Yeah, you could probably say that way.
Yeah.
But She lived there next door to us, not in that house. They tore down that house, John Birdsong did, and built that one. But that old house was a good house. It was 4 rooms and a front and back hall, and then a step up, and then a dining room kitchen back there with a porch on the west side. And I don't know why they ever tore it down. It wasn't rotten in any way, but they tore it down and built that one. And our house, getting off the side of the street now, that was the Stallings home where the Birdsongs and Fulmers lived. And our house was built for one of their sons.
Oh.
And Papa Burston, his Heavy King, he was a Stalling.
I've read about the Stallings. I mean, I've run across them in the book. All right, now this next one up here looks like an old house.
That's an old Clark home, John Clark.
John Clark.
And that's basically a good house.
I bet it is, too. And who was John Clark? Was he Blue Clark's grandfather?
None of his children are here. But you see, they built a room on the west side, and the entrance was right here where there was a vestibule.
Yeah.
And then they built that room on there. I guess when the girls got a big enough court, they wanted one of a courting room, so they put a hall there and then built that. Made a damn good courting room across the hallway.
Yeah, that was a good one, man.
Now, Miss Clark had this house built. And Miss former her brother, old man, Van Jennings, lived in that house when I was a little boy, told me that he built that house for her $350. But it's been a good house.
Where was the little girl killed in the cave-in? Was it somewhere back?
It was back of Miss Spanish, right north of that alley that goes through there.
Yeah.
I haven't been going through. Go back in there and show you how it's shaped now.
I just found the article in the paper the other day where they...
Now, this was part of the Clark property. See, the Clark property surrounded it. And Warren Ray gave that lot to the Methodist Church and they built that property.
Oh, when Warren bought it, then he got all this up there.
Oh, yeah. There's a pasture. People pastured there for years. Now, this was old, I believe old man Chapman's initials was W.C. There's no miss, old lawyer Chapman.
Oh, yeah, I found a lawyer Chapman in the paper. And I didn't know there was a lawyer Chapman.
I think the Markets bought it from the Chapman. And way back, I don't remember when the Markets did not live there. I remember when they were overhauling that house, being there trying to step around on some floor joists.
Mm-hmm.
But
you mean you overhauled it within your memory? When did it burn the top story off?
Long in there. I couldn't say the year, but
in the 20s.
Long in the late 20s.
Yeah.
There was a little back porch. You went upstairs, and out to the west, there was a little back porch. It didn't have any support under it. Didn't have any roof over it. I don't know if anybody ever built a porch that didn't have a roof over it, a wooden porch. Mm. But anyhow, Miss Jessie sat on one of these oil heaters out there, and I think she sat too close to the wall, and she went around, was working in the garden, and looked back up there, and the house was on fire. Good. Grandma was in there. She was upstairs. She was
Grandma Royal.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what her age was then. She died.
She's a little bitty woman.
Well, she had been a fair-sized woman. Of course, as you get older, you lose all your weight. She died in 35, I think. That might have been 6, 7 years before she died. But she was an old lady. And she took 6 months to be 95, or 7 years. She's 87.
Well, didn't this road used to go around that way and didn't go down here?
Yeah, you turn up a little further. I'll show you about the killing of Henry Hill. You want to hear about that?
Yeah. Right here, is that his name, Henry Hill?
Yeah, right here where the Miss Milstead lived was the front lot of my grandmother's home. It had 4, 5, 6 trees. You see that little tree back yonder?
Yeah.
Now see, this is where you turn. You follow the ridge around.
Yeah.
But my grandmother's home was right at the back of that division fence. And the deed...
Over there?
Yeah. And the deed of this front lot described it by meets and bounds. No meets and bounds either. It said it's bounded on the south by the home of Martha Knox. It's bounded on the east by the Baptist parsonage. That was it right over there.
Where Wiley Walker used to be.
Bounded on the north by the south boundary of Market Street, and on the west by the J.D. Seaman's property. That was his property. No meets, no bounds, nothing. But see, there's a road going around here, nothing here. People walking across through that grove had a path right through there.
Yeah.
And John Market shot that boy. He was on that path somewhere, and then he fell on the bank. This guy had been really down, fell over here on this bank.
And he was shot him from the house.
Shot him from his upstairs.
Well, I had a peculiar experience the other day after Minnie Maud was buried, and I forgot to go to the funeral. I was down in the pasture, and the boys came running and said, "There's a bunch of Markets up here who want to talk to you." So I go up there, and there's two sons of Ralph, both doctors.
Yeah, well, the dentist, that little one looks as much like Ralph Market as he dropped out of the same litter.
Yeah. Well, they sat down, and we exchanged pleasantries, and I pretty soon knew what they wanted. They said, "Now, we don't want a lot of gobbledygook like we've gotten all our lives. We want us to tell you what happened to our grandfather." How about that?
This little Jimmy?
Yeah. I just... He wouldn't come in there again for 2 years. Well, they wanted to know about...
Now, here's a chapman about to end it here, and let's come back to Possum Hollow, the Lee Street. They want to know what?
They want to know about the true story about how the grandfather got killed. And I said, "Did any of your family given the temper tantrums?" And they looked at each other. Said, "Yeah, that's been a problem with our family." Said, "Our father had them." I said, "Well, that's what happened to your grandfather. He apparently had temper tantrums, and he was hard to work with." I told him just how it was with Turner. And I said, "And there was that thing about the hill boy," and I thought they knew about it. See, they had never heard of that thing. They didn't. And then along the way they says, "Now just tell us like it is. Says that we need to know these things because if there's a genetic weakness here somewhere, we need to guard against it." And I said, "Well, from what I've heard, I believe he must have been mildly paranoid all of his adult life because he was always in trouble with somebody." And he said, "Well, the story we got is that our grandfather was framed by the Ku Klux Klan for some politics. He got into politics and tried to run for something."
He ran for city all
of them, yeah.
Elected one time, they got the second, or his first card on the first race said, "Try me a barrel." He got his second primaries and got some more cards. I said, "Try me another barrel."
You know, that was an expression Earl Bell used to use.
I wish they could come to me. I could tell them that whole story from start to finish. Now, what I want to tell you about that killing of Henry Hill, he didn't know who he was killing.
Oh, I thought there was a grudge with the Hills, mate.
Not. But, see, you know, this wasn't here. And right on that corner there was a great big crepe myrtle bush, about this big around the base. And right in front of, across the street from Jimmy's back here was a small house over there. And that man's wife had the reputation of receiving guests.
Oh.
All right, Beaumart's tale was, and some folks said he's lying, that he kept bird dogs. His bird dogs were just charging everything down there. And he went out on the front porch and said, "Who's down there?" And she said, this voice from down there said, "None of your damn business." He went back and got his Winchester rifle, and that hill boy was crossing that path I told you about. John Market shot up. Yeah. That hill boy was simple and silly enough to answer a fired gun with a pistol he had in his hand, in his pocket. And when he did, boy, he aimed that Winchester down there and he mowed him down. And Papa was sitting on the front porch. It was just first dark. Mm-hmm. And old Mr. Emory Jennings lived next door with his sister and his brother, Mr. Ford. He walked down Papa was down the porch and said, "Bud, did you hear that?" Papa said, "Yes, I heard it." He said, "Let's go up there." I said, "Let's just wait a minute. Let's wait. Somebody else comes along." But while he was sitting there, you see, I told you the pasture surrounding the Clark place.
Yeah.
A man came running from the north out of the Clark pasture in a white shirt, hopped over the fence and went east on the north side of Market Street as hard as he could tell. Papa always believed John Market told the truth, that fellow was hiding here watching his house. And after that shooting took place and that boy was hit, he jumped in that pasture and ran around there to get away from there as fast as he could.
And when he was going to this house?
And he was watching it.
Oh, I see, watching it. Maybe thought maybe it was a husband.
It was a husband. He was watching his house.
Yeah.
But that's what attracted the dogs.
I see.
Now,
So-
old man John Market, I don't know about him way back there, but not getting along with folks in general, but he could be one of the jolliest humans you ever
That's what
saw.
I told him. I said, listen, he would have a fight with a conductor or something down here before they leave town, and once they got it out of his system, he would just jolly all the way to Jackson.
Oh, he liked kids and he liked music. And another thing he liked when he started to call his lawyer music, he called us to play something, get some of that high wall music. Oh, high wall music. That was one of the expressions he used to use was.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
there was no grudge between he and this Hill family.
None at all. Papa helped carry that boy home. He was 18 years old. And carried him out there to his house, stayed there with him that night till he died. Next morning, something at 5, so there's several of them sitting up there, and he put on him again until Ms. Hill would come on in there. Looked like he wasn't going to last much longer.
He's just 18.
Mm-hmm. And a ministerial student, but he took the pistol.
Oh, he did have a pistol on him, huh? That's what you said. He answered.
Then what you told me about Mr. Creekmore telling you or somebody about him and Rufus going to South Mississippi and chasing through the records of a hardware store and finding the receipt where Henry had received for that gun. Somebody told me that.
Well, now Taylor Howard told me that Ben Smith got that gun and hid it, but he finally had to give it up.
Ben Smith claimed the gun was his.
Oh,
And
was
Mr.
it?
Creekmore proved it by a receipt that it belonged to Henry Hill. And that's they tell me that's when
That's what
they got
turned the
old-
trial.
They got old Ben for perjury. See, he done sworn it was his gun. He proved he didn't own it.
Yeah,
See, Ben Smith lived out there where the schoolhouse is in the old log house.
yeah.
And they were some kind of kin to the Hills. I never did know how they were kin, but they called me his Hill cousin Ella.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was going to relieve the boy of
Yeah, that would have helped.
having a gun in Egypt. But that substantiated that business of firing that gun.
So people heard him shoot, I guess. So there wasn't any way to get around that.
Well, I don't know why he didn't blow it in front of my grandmother's house back across there. Well, he must have been shooting at an angle and went across the corner. See, it's an open pasture down there. Then that land was pretty well open. Come on over yonder, go by Miss Wagner's house down to Wagner Street.
Can't imagine it being open. I guess this was all probably open in here, grown up wood.
That was as a Hills pasture.
Uh-huh.
We used to carry cows. There's a big gate right there in that corner.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, and people, maybe there would be a dozen people pastured cows in there. That pasture land went plumb on, well on the west side of where the school is now, and went north up kind of to Tom Hendricks.
So where did Tom Hendricks live?
Lives where? At Hill Boy. Married Rose Ruth.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Gary
old.
Wayne.
Yeah, that's the old Tom Hendricks house overhauled.
Oh, I see.
Tom Hendricks was Lynn Morris's great-grandfather. Lived there. Papa always liked those Hendricks boys. He thought the world of old man Tom Hendricks.
Well, is that Miss Sam White's Lillian's daddy?
Daddy.
Yeah.
And old man Hendricks was a plain old farmer, but he was held on for what he thought was right, and he'd argue about it from hell. And one year, Papa made a deal with him to furnish us with a half bushel of Irish potatoes. I reckon sure we didn't need a half bushel of 2 weeks every so often, but at a fixed price. And old man Henry said, now if potatoes go up, I'll stay right where I am. But he's selling them in a little high what they were selling for in the stores. Well, they went on, I think, a couple of months like that, and potatoes went on up, and old man Tom went up with them. Tom never did animal confidence, old man Tom Henry.
Well, there was a bunch of the Hendrickses. I remember
Lorenzo,
Lorenzo
Tommy,
Tommy.
and Tommy, and Tommy Lee was his name, and Jesse was my age.
Jesse.
And he's the youngest, and then there's Arthur. That's one I couldn't think of.
Mm-hmm. They all gone, aren't they?
Yeah, Jesse died a year or so ago.
He was the youngest.
Yeah. See, old man Will Hill grew up in that log house over there. I think he told me he was born in that house in 54, something like that.
Well, that house was Alabama then, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, but 80 acres is a place to start with. You know, get your place in the edge of the woods and hunt a little while you have. Make a little meal, raise a hog on the outside. But his wife, he had a family, several children. And his wife died and he married a second time, and Mr. Will was the only child of that second marriage.
I see.
There's a big spring down there, and there used to be just a Baptist church used to baptize down there.
There's still a spring there, and that used to be where the Hills did their washing, or their washwoman washed them.
They didn't, you know, they had a well up there at home. And they now the corner, see, this next place here was a woods place.
Yeah, I remember when Leroy lived up somewhere up there.
Yeah, but right here was this little dump right down here. People say you put cows in down here.
Into the hill pasture.
The hill pasture there.
That was big business. You pay $1 or $2 a month and
$1.
$1. Use somebody else's tax.
Now you want to go back around the other side of Market Street?
Yeah, I will, but I want to get down in and show you about where
this is the back of that market property here. I don't know where they were going to put out a flag. We used to run swimming that pond up there naked, and niggas all over us all right here. Just on the springboard.
You mean there's a pond up there?
Yeah.
I figured right down in here somewhere is where those children live.
Oh no, you have to go into the other side.
The more.
Yeah, that's right. We live right on that property where that house is right there, I think.
They've made some right pretty little houses. I just hope they'll keep them neat and clean.